About 4 billion years ago, the core of our neighboring planet Mars cooled down. As a result, over time, Mars's magnetic field also began to weaken, and eventually, there came a moment when this magnetic field became completely inactive. After that, the sun's harsh effects began to take their toll on it. As soon as the protective shield of the magnetic field disappeared, the deadly radiation coming from the sun entered Mars's atmosphere. Because of this, Mars's temperature increased rapidly in a very short time. As a result, all the rivers and lakes on Mars dried up and disappeared, and it happened like this. Billions of years ago, this lush green planet was completely destroyed and turned into a wasteland. But the process of Mars turning into this graveyard wasn't that simple or quick. This event was surrounded by a whole sequence of events. Research missions that have been going on for many years have proven that billions of years ago, liquid water existed on the surface of Mars. There were rivers, lakes, and oceans there just like on Earth, which eventually disappeared over time. Valleys and river basins formed by the flow of water. Even today, these features loudly testify to this fact. We now know them as ancient rivers, which can be seen in almost every part of Mars. Not only are there remnants of rivers and streams, but there are also traces of ancient lakes and frozen ice caps on Mars. In a recent discovery, scientists have found a massive reservoir of water beneath the surface of Mars. And the interesting thing is that this water is in a liquid state, so is this a sign of life on Mars or just evidence of destruction? We'll find out all about this in today's episode. Friends, we all know how essential water is for the existence of life. History is witness to the fact that civilizations have always originated near water, and it is because of water that they were able to establish their dominance in this world. In such a situation, today water is considered one of the most important elements of life. If water is found on any celestial body, especially in liquid form, then you can say that there is already a 50% confirmation of the presence of life there. Actually, this is the reason why, after Earth, Mars is considered the strongest contender for the existence of life in our solar system. On one hand, this planet is the home of science fiction and concepts of extraterrestrial life. At the same time, it is also being considered an important hotspot for scientific research and development today, although Mars looks completely deserted and barren, like a graveyard. But beneath its lifeless surface, many secrets are buried, secrets that once brought destruction here, turning this lively world into a wasteland in an instant. In fact, whatever scientists have understood so far about the structure of Mars and its atmosphere, most of it has come from studying the soil and rocks of this planet. And today, this very soil of Mars has revealed some secrets. Among these secrets is also the mystery of the lost water here. In fact, scientists have recently discovered this, or you could say that based on some evidence, it is being estimated that when Mars actually lost its atmosphere, the atmospheric pressure here dropped drastically. As a result, instead of 99% of the water evaporating into the sky as vapor, it seeped down and got absorbed into the soil of Mars. There is also a lot of substantial and observational evidence supporting this theory, but before we get into those, let's understand this unique scenario of the existence of water on Mars. Well, we all know that water, or aqua, is a compound formed by the combination of two different elements, hydrogen and oxygen. In the chemical formula of water, not just one but two different case forms can exist. The first one is the one we usually see. Yes, the same water that you drink, that you see falling from the sky, and what's more, the one that commonly exists naturally on our planet Earth. But apart from this normal water, there is also another type of water in which the oxygen is in its usual form, but instead of common conventional hydrogen, it contains deuterium. Let me tell you that deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen whose nucleus contains one proton along with one neutron, whereas in a normal hydrogen molecule, only one proton exists. At the quantum level, the presence of these particles has a massive impact in real-life situations. Water made from the combination of deuterium atoms is called heavy water because it is actually denser and heavier than regular water. But here's an interesting thing. This thing called deuterium exists very rarely in the entire universe. In fact, if we say that the amount of deuterium in this universe is as little as a single drop in a vast ocean, that would be accurate. For Mars though, it's a bit different. Now, since hydrogen is extremely light, during the atmospheric collapse on Mars, all the hydrogen quickly escaped from the atmosphere and was released into space. But its twin, deuterium, which is several times heavier, remained trapped there. and now speculations are being made about that leftover deuterium. The year 1975 was the year when, for the first time, a spacecraft successfully landed on the surface of Mars, and while staying there, it also conducted a lot of research. The soil of Mars was also examined by LIJA, and evidence of life was searched for in the lifeless atmosphere of Mars. Since then, National Aeronautics and Space Administration and many other space agencies around the world have sent several missions to Mars, whether in the form of robotic landers and rovers or orbiters keeping an eye on Mars from space. Humans have always shown interest in searching for life on Mars, and the most important element for life to develop, water. In this series, the primary motive of many scientific missions was to search for water on Mars and evidence related to it. Data from the ExoMars orbiter of the European Space Agency or European Space Agency introduced us to a massive reservoir of water present in the largest canyon on Mars, Valles Marineris. %40 of it is made up of ice formed by the freezing of Martian water. Along with this, while mapping elements at a place called Candor Chaos, the Trace Gas Orbiter orbiting Mars also made a discovery. It found that even today, there is a high value of deuterium present in Mars' atmosphere and geosphere, which combines with oxygen to form heavy water. Recently, the Perseverance rover that landed on Mars introduced us to an ancient lake on Mars. Even today, seeing this provides evidence of the flow of ancient water sources. Even today, it seems that at one time, rivers and lakes used to flow here just like on our Earth. The weather must have been pleasant, gentle, and delightful, and perhaps some Martians who admired this beautiful view also used to live here. Well, after seeing this pattern of water connection on Mars, did you understand anything? Don't you think that these events happening one after another can't just be a coincidence? Exactly. Every time, in every search, a different place on Mars was targeted, and every time, traces of water were found at a different location. Anyway, if we talk about the most recent and revolutionary development, it's actually about the Mars Trace Gas Orbiter's Fine Resolution Epithermal Neutron Detector instrument. Recently, the Trace Gas Orbiter has created a neutron emission map of the Martian surface. In this map, it can be clearly seen what the rate of neutron emission is in different parts of Mars. The extreme blue zones shown in this illustration represent high-intensity neutron emission, which is associated with the presence of water beneath the Martian surface. In fact, the more water that is present beneath the surface of Mars, the higher the emission of neutrons will be from that area. Actually, these neutrons are parts of deuterium, and due to high zonal unity, they keep moving not only on the surface but also in the air. And with the use of this revolutionary technology, it was confirmed that in most regions of Mars, water is still present beneath the ground. Now, whether it's just a few inches below the surface or several kilometers deep, only future missions that will dig there will be able to reveal this. Billions of years ago, when the first rays from the sun fell on the flowing water of Mars and the winds passed through trees and forests towards the sky, this red planet used to look something like this. We know that at that time Mars was suitable for life, which today has become completely barren and cold. Maybe life once breathed there. But this thought also gives rise to some important questions. What suddenly happened to this planet? What exactly took place? What connection does life have with a planet like Mars? And if there really was life here at some point, then where are its remains now? A recent study has revealed that Mars's own biosphere became the cause of extinction for life there, and life itself became its own biggest enemy, putting itself in danger, which is why Mars is in its current state today. The findings have also identified some regions on Mars where life might have once existed, including the Jezero crater, where National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Perseverance rover is currently searching for signs of life on Mars. The study also suggests that if there is a greatest enemy of life in this universe, it is life itself. And this applies to us humans as well. Researchers recreated Mars as it was about 4 billion years ago. They created and studied the climate, terrain, models, biosphere, and the entire ecosystem there. This revealed that there was a time when the number of methane-producing microorganisms on Mars was very high. They used to live a few centimeters below the soil of this red planet, and they were protected by the soil above them. But those microbes kept consuming the hydrogen and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But they didn't know that their food above the ground was going to create a huge problem for them. Slowly Slowly, Mars began to freeze, and those microbes remained trapped beneath the surface of Mars. The place where they were thriving has now become their grave. This was published in Nature Astronomy. This study shows that the interchange of hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and methane led to a decrease in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And this reaction triggered a global cooling, which covered almost the entire surface of Mars with a sheet of ice that wiped out all traces of life. The researchers say that when life exists in perfectly favorable conditions on a planet, that's when it is most dangerous. You could say that it becomes its own enemy. But this thing gets revealed slowly, and by then, it might already be too late. The postdoctoral fellow from Sorbonne University who led this study says that this self-destructive tendency is what prevents life from spreading on a large scale in this universe. There are two hypotheses that are quite popular regarding the existence of life. In 1965, there was an ecologist and chemist working at National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Jet Propulsion Laboratory whose name was James Lovelock. He said that some chemical compounds act as a biosignature in the planet's atmosphere. If these can be detected, then the presence of life on that planet can be confirmed. For example, on our planet Earth, methane and oxygen coexist, where methane is produced by bacteria called methanogens and oxygen comes from photosynthetic organisms. Together, these two create a biosignature as each gas in its ambient atmosphere can eliminate the other organism. These two compensate for each other's absence and create a balanced ecosystem. Lovelock's work has now become the foundation for the scientific research being done on alien life. And from this, a hypothesis emerged called the Gaia hypothesis, which Lovelock developed together with biologist Lynn Margulis. This hypothesis, which came in the 1970s, was named after the Greek mythology goddess Mother Earth. It stated that life is self-sustaining, which means that life can regulate itself. For example, on Earth, there are many organisms collectively interact with each other and with the surrounding environment in such a way that the habitability of the environment is maintained. When carbon dioxide increases in the environment, it also raises the global temperature. But for the same reason, plants get a boost, which increases their growth even more. As a result, they absorb more and more carbon dioxide, which brings the planet back to a cooler state. So in this way, the hypothesis says that life somehow finds a way to survive and it is self-regulating, but the other hypothesis is much scarier than this. In 2009, University of Washington paleontologist Peter Ward presented an idea that was completely opposite to the Gaia hypothesis. Ward says that on a planetary scale, life is not self-regulating, rather it is self-destructive. And because of its actions, it creates circumstances that lead to its own extinction. Completely opposite to the Gaia hypothesis, Ward named his idea after another figure from Greek mythology. Medea was a mother who killed her own children. The Medea hypothesis states that life ultimately destroys its own existence. To support this idea, Ward cites several mass extinctions that have occurred on Earth in the past. This suggests that life inherits a property similar to being self-destructive. About 2 billion years ago, the Great Oxidation event occurred due to the self-destructive nature of life forms. Synthetic cyanobacteria pumped a large amount of oxygen into Earth's atmosphere. This wiped out the dominant life forms of that time, methanogens and other anaerobic organisms. Because for them, oxygen was toxic, it was poison. If you look at the history of the Earth, you will find many periods where the greatest enemy of life was none other than life itself. And White believes that the same thing must have happened on Mars as well. If we look at Earth, oxygen is crucial for biological diversification here, which is why multicellular ancestors were able to emerge. Which makes us feel that, in a way, both these hypotheses are a play of the Gaia and Medea perspectives. Until we find life on another planet, we will have to solve this question with our own understanding, like the theoretical study done by Boris. He is a research scientist at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute. He says that these ideas expand the scope of our thinking, the way we look at life, the biosphere, and habitability. But he also says here that this idea only considers those events that alter the planet on a large scale. There is a complexity in major events like the Great Oxidation event, and that is Both methanogens and cyanobacteria had conflicting influences on each other. Both were highly dependent on each other. There wasn't much diversification at that time. Boris also acknowledged this shortcoming in his theory and said that if life is complex, if it is diverse, then the biosphere will not have as much of a negative effect on the planet's habitability. If we compare it, it would be less than the effect caused by the presence of only methanogens. This study highlighted how complex ecosystems, like the one that existed on early Earth, were able to cope with sudden environmental changes. This means that complex and diverse life can prevent self-destruction. Ward says that when life evolves on a planet, the only way for it to survive is for intelligence to evolve within that life, so that it can search for resources to improve its life and eliminate the chances of its premature end. However, Boris has only studied ancient Mars. He did not consider the possibility of present-day methane genes on Mars. Who knows, maybe this study could somehow explain the recently discovered reserves of methane gas on Mars. However, it is also possible that the release of that methane gas was due to some lifeless geophysical activity. But the study done on ancient Mars identifies some places that remained free of ice throughout much of the planet's history, while a global glaciation on Mars had completely covered the surface with ice. But what was so special about those places that they remained free of ice? One of those places is Jezero Crater, where today the Perseverance rover is searching for biosignatures on Mars. There is also a possibility that the remains of the early methanogens are buried much deeper beneath the surface of Mars, where the rover cannot reach. The study also mentions two other sites. Number one is the area of Hellas Planitia, and the second is the area of Isidis Planitia. There is a possibility of signs of life beneath the surface in these regions. This study could serve as a reference point for our future Mars missions. However, Boris also says about his study that his work is hypothetical. Just because Mars was once habitable doesn't necessarily mean that life actually existed there. Now, whether or not methanogens ever existed on Mars, it will determine the path of our lives and all life on Earth, so now it's up to you to decide what you believe. Did life on Mars destroy itself? We often hear that the condition of our planet Earth is getting worse day by day. Due to rising temperatures, glaciers are continuously melting, our cities are being covered under a blanket of smog caused by pollution. Cities are flooding due to rising water levels, and in some places it has stopped raining altogether, leading to droughts. That means because of our human actions, these changes are causing a decline in the Earth's health. In such a situation, it wouldn't be wrong to say that soon this planet may no longer be suitable for us to live on. There will be some terrifying changes here that will force us to look for shelter somewhere else in this infinite universe. And when it comes to home after Earth, the first thought that comes to our mind is Mars, and why shouldn't it? According to our understanding so far, Mars is the biggest contender for this spot. In many ways, it is quite similar to our Earth. However, it cannot be ignored that currently, the factors that support life on Mars are almost non-existent. Because Mars is the key to our destiny, Mars is the reality of our future. Therefore, on the way to reaching Mars and then settling there, many difficulties and challenges are waiting for us. So would you like to face these challenges? Wouldn't you want to embark on this journey to Mars's future? I'm sure, definitely. That's why we, meaning Documentary Library, are going on this trip to Mars today, where all of us together will go to Mars, settle there, farm, and live a happy life. So, shall we go? By the way, keep in mind that this trip is going to be one way only, so passengers, please pack all your belongings carefully because there is no way back on this journey. By the way, keep in mind this trip is one way. So passengers, please be careful because there is no way back on this journey. By the way, keep in mind this trip is one way, so passengers, please pack your luggage carefully because there is no way back on this journey. There is. By the way, keep in mind this trip is one way, so passengers, please take your luggage. Take it because there is no way back. By the way, the best thing here is that for now, most of the work on Mars will be done by our robots. Created with the powerful combination of machine learning and artificial intelligence, these wonders will prove to be very effective in building cities on Mars. They will be equipped with all those sensors that will help them work very quickly and precisely. After that, in a very short time, we will have plenty of homes ready. Then, high-pressure zones will be created in these shelters. You already know that the atmosphere on Mars is thin, which means the air pressure there is very low, so low that humans can't survive in it. That's why we'll have to arrange for proper gas exchange and pressure maintenance inside these capsules, and ultimately, to keep these things running, we'll also need to set up plenty of solar panels on Mars to generate the necessary electricity. Inside these Martian shelters, astronauts can move around freely without any spacesuit or protective clothing. However, as soon as they step outside, they'll need them, a special kind of bodysuit that can continuously supply them with oxygen and also maintain the air pressure on their bodies. Now, if our Martians want to roam around on Mars, they'll need a vehicle that can take them from one place to another on the planet. After that, they'll have to embark on a big mission. In fact, why did they leave Earth for Mars? When they set out, they brought a lot of food with them, but now it's about to run out. After the long 8-month journey and landing on Mars, most of the food has already The truth is, whether it's National Aeronautics and Space Administration SPACEX or any agency hosting this mission, they are fully dedicated to supporting these astronauts. The control center on the ground is constantly monitoring the astronauts' every move. The crew present on Mars is also maintaining continuous communication. Everything is being monitored, from the robot's batteries to the cabin pressure, even the smallest details. And regularly, rockets loaded with machines and robots are also being sent there to build a human settlement, which after landing on Mars are proving to be very effective in building up this infrastructure. Actually, these machines will be quite intelligent in their work. They will have complete knowledge from engineering to botany, and with the help of that knowledge, they are engaged in completing their mission. By the way, if you want to understand the science of growing potatoes on Mars, you can click on the I button and watch this video. Water is necessary, right? Without it, it's impossible to even imagine life. So, the simple answer to the question is the water synthesis process. Because of this, he infuses the hydrogen and oxygen gases stored in the fuel tanks with each other. This is the only way and the only sustainable option left. Now we have water, a roof over our heads, plenty of Martian food to eat, and overall everything is going pretty well. But is this really enough to settle humans on Mars? Where there will be a detailed timeline of all these developments. I'm really excited. Are you too? Then comment below soon. And friends, if you liked today's video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Also, if you are new to Documentary Library, then subscribe and enable the bell notification so that you can get astronomy and space science videos first. Friends, we'll meet again with another new informative video. Until then, stay curious, be happy, and goodbye.